It was supposed to be an ordinary winter evening in Philadelphia. Snow had begun to fall gently outside the apartment complex, coating the city in silence. Inside one of those apartments, 27-year-old Ellen Greenberg was finishing up her workday. She was a bright, beloved schoolteacher, known for her kindness, her gentle smile, and her passion for helping children. Her life seemed picture perfect. She was engaged to her longtime boyfriend, planning her wedding, and had recently been promoted at work. But behind the smiles and the seemingly peaceful life, something dark was brewing, something no one around her could see coming. January 26, 2011. It's a day that would later haunt investigators, friends and family alike. Around 6:30 p.m., Ellen's fiancé, Sam Goldberg, returned home to the apartment they shared. According to him, he had gone to the gym, and when he came back he found the door locked from the inside with a swing bar latch. Something that could only be locked from within. He knocked several times. No response. He texted Ellen. No reply. He even called her multiple times. But the silence was unnerving. In frustration, he sent a series of texts that later became key evidence. "Hello, you better have an excuse. I'm getting pissed." And then the final one. "Open the door." When Ellen didn't respond, Sam claimed he forced the door open using brute strength. And that's when he says his world came crashing down. Inside, he found Ellen on the kitchen floor, slumped against the cabinets, her body covered in blood. A knife was still embedded in her chest. The scene was straight out of a nightmare. Blood splattered across the counter, a half-eaten fruit nearby, and Ellen's lifeless body resting in a pool of red. Sam immediately called 911, panicked, shouting that his fiancée had committed suicide. When first responders arrived, what they saw left them stunned. Ellen had not 1 or 2 wounds but 20 stab wounds, 10 to the back of her neck and head, and 10 to her chest and stomach. Some were so deep that they reached bone, and yet the apartment showed no signs of a struggle. Nothing was broken. No signs of forced entry. The door had been locked from the inside. There were no defensive wounds on Ellen's hands. The knife, they noted, was from her own kitchen set. The initial assumption seemed simple. Maybe she had taken her own life, but as investigators started piecing the story together, nothing about it made sense. 20 stab wounds, including to the back of her neck. How could anyone do that to themselves? Especially in such a controlled and sequential way. The medical examiner at first ruled her death a homicide, but weeks later, after police pressure and further review, that ruling was changed to suicide. The change sent shockwaves through the community. Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandra Greenberg, were devastated. Their daughter, they insisted, had no reason to end her life. She was engaged, successful, and had been talking to them about wedding plans just days before her death. Her emails, her texts, even her recent calls, all pointed to a woman looking forward to her future. Yet investigators claimed she was struggling with anxiety and had been prescribed medication. But even that didn't explain the violence of her death. The Greenbergs refused to accept the ruling. They began their own relentless search for the truth, hiring private investigators, forensic experts and attorneys. Every new piece of evidence they uncovered made the case more chilling. For instance, the knife that killed Ellen was lodged in her chest with such force that experts said it would have been almost impossible for her to stab herself that many times. Even stranger, there were clean, deliberate stab wounds to the back of her head, areas that would be nearly impossible to reach in a self-inflicted attack. But the biggest question of all remained, if Ellen didn't do this to herself, then who did? Her fiancé, Sam, quickly became the center of speculation. He was the last person to see her alive, or at least to claim he did. His timeline raised questions. He said he was at the gym for about 45 minutes. Security footage confirmed his presence there, but there was still a gap of several minutes unaccounted for. The apartment door latch was another mystery. Could someone have locked it from the inside and escaped somehow? Investigators said no. The only possible exit was the door itself, but critics pointed out that the latch could have been forced closed afterward or even broken and replaced later. Then came the strange behavior in Sam's texts. While Ellen was allegedly lying dead or dying inside, He had sent increasingly irritated messages instead of showing genuine fear or concern. And after he found her, some say his 911 call sounded more panicked about himself than about Ellen. Still, despite these suspicions, police never charged him with anything. They maintained that the evidence pointed towards suicide. Their reasoning? The locked door, lack of defensive wounds, and Ellen's recent history of anxiety treatment. But to many experts, it felt like they were trying to make the evidence fit the narrative, rather than the other way around. The autopsy photos, later made public, revealed even more inconsistencies. There were bruises on Ellen's arms, legs, and torso, some fresh, others old. These bruises suggested possible physical altercations leading up to her death. Her spinal wound alone, forensic pathologists said, would have incapacitated her instantly, making it impossible to continue stabbing herself afterward. That alone should have ruled out suicide. And yet, the ruling stayed the same. The case was officially closed as a suicide. But Ellen's parents never stopped fighting. They've spent over a decade battling for justice, filing multiple lawsuits to have the case reclassified as a homicide. They've spoken publicly, pleading for the truth, saying, "Our daughter didn't do this to herself. Somebody killed her, and we need the world to know." Even forensic experts around the country have come forward, saying that the evidence screams murder. One leading pathologist said bluntly, "This is not suicide, it's homicide, plain and simple." But the question remains, if it was murder, then who was responsible? And why would anyone want to silence Ellen Greenberg? The mystery surrounding Ellen's death only grew darker as years went by. Every time her parents pushed for answers, new layers of confusion emerged. Contradictions in reports, missing files, and unexplained alterations in evidence. It seemed as though someone didn't want the truth to come out. One of the most haunting details was the knife itself. It was found still embedded in Ellen's chest when police arrived, but crime scene photos show something odd. The handle appeared clean with little blood on it. Forensic experts argued that if Ellen had stabbed herself 20 times, there would have been significant transfer of blood on the handle, especially on her hands. But there wasn't. Even stranger, her hands showed no blood splatter consistent with self-inflicted wounds of that magnitude. Then came the issue of the locked door. Police used the door's swing latch as proof that no one else could have entered or left. But independent investigators demonstrated that the latch could easily be manipulated, using a simple object like a string or wire. The possibility that the killer staged the scene to look like a suicide began to gain traction. Ellen's mental state became another key part of the debate. Yes, she had been struggling with anxiety, but according to her friends and family, she was seeking help, not giving up on life. Her teaching job had been stressful, but she loved her students deeply. Just days before her death, she had bought groceries, filled her car's gas tank, and texted friends about plans. Nothing about her actions suggested she was preparing to end her life. As the years passed, Ellen's parents fought tirelessly to reopen the case. In 2019, they filed a civil lawsuit demanding the cause of death be changed from suicide to homicide, or at least undetermined. They presented new forensic reviews, including findings from multiple independent experts, who unanimously agreed that the wounds could not have been self-inflicted. One expert, Dr. Cyril Wecht, a world-renowned forensic pathologist, called the case an absolute travesty. He pointed out that the depth, angle, and number of Ellen's wounds were not consistent with any known suicide pattern. Another specialist revealed that the spinal wound would have rendered Ellen physically incapable of further movement, let alone multiple additional stabs. Yet, the authorities held their ground. The district attorney's office maintained that there was no definitive evidence of a struggle or outside involvement. The frustration was overwhelming for the Greenbergs, who believed that their daughter's death had been mishandled from the very beginning. The public, too, began to question the investigation. Online communities and true crime forums dissected every detail of the case, pointing out glaring inconsistencies. Some speculated that Ellen might have uncovered something sensitive, perhaps at work or in her personal life, that led to her death. Others suggested that the police simply wanted to close the case quickly to avoid further scrutiny. As of today, the official ruling still stands: suicide. But very few believe it. The evidence tells a story that refuses to align with that conclusion. And perhaps that's the most chilling part of all. How an intelligent, kind young woman could die in such a brutal way, and yet her case remains unsolved, buried beneath bureaucracy and unanswered questions. Ellen Greenberg's parents continue to speak out. Their message is simple. We will never stop until Ellen gets justice. They've turned their grief into determination, refusing to let her memory fade away. Their fight has inspired countless people around the world, families who've also faced injustice, and who know too well the pain of unanswered loss. This case is more than just a mystery. It's a reminder of how fragile truth can be, how easily it can be twisted, hidden or ignored. Ellen's story is not only about her tragic death, it's about the fight for transparency, the need for accountability, and the enduring power of love that refuses to give up. In the end, the world may never know exactly what happened inside that apartment on that cold January evening. But one thing is certain. Ellen Greenberg's story will never be forgotten. Her name stands as a haunting question mark in the history of true crime. A reminder that sometimes, even when all the doors are locked, the truth can still find a way out.